Okay, lesson 2.5, completing the square. Okay, one of our ways to solve the equations, solve these quadratic equations. Now, as you look at A, that one we can solve like we did yesterday. How did we solve that in 2.4?
Square root.
Square roots. What do we have to do first?
You have to get the x by subtract.
Okay. So when we just have, this one is an example where we just have x squared, right? And a bunch of other numbers. So work to get the x squared by itself. So I heard subtract the 10. I agree. If we subtract the 10, I now have 4x squared equals 36.
Now you divide.
Divide by 4. We're going to divide by 4, again, working to get x squared by itself. So now I have x squared equals 9. Okay, when you have x squared equals a number, or something squared equals a number like that, you take the square root of both sides. Okay, the square root of x squared becomes x. Square root of 9.
3.
Plus or minus 3.
Do we still need that plus or minus 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, difference from yesterday to today. Yesterday it would have been square root of a negative 9, right? And we would have had to say 3i. This one happened to be a real number. Am I saying we are only having real numbers today? No, we're going to have imaginaries. Okay. But key is, remember, when you take the square root in an equation setting, don't forget to tack that plus or minus on. Okay, that is a necessary there. But that's kind of review from yesterday in a way, right? We're going to continue and use that same technique of taking the square root of both sides. Okay? Now, as we go over here to B, x plus 7 quantity squared equals negative 25. Okay. Notice it said use square roots to solve these, right? That's our plan in this first section, is using square roots. On the left, if it's x plus 7 quantity squared, is that a perfect square?
X squared.
Well, but we don't even have to multiply it out. It's just x plus 7 times x plus 7. That we can consider a perfect square. So the idea here is when you have parentheses squared, I'm not going to multiply that out. Since I have parentheses squared, I'm going to start right here by taking the square root. And it's because I have those parentheses with the square on it. Now, you guys know if we take the square root of the left, we're going to take the square root of the right. Okay. Now, what is the square root of x plus 7 squared?
X plus 7.
Yes? Yes? The square root and the square cancel each other. Do we know that? Do we remember that from Algebra 1? Okay. When you take a square root, it's essentially going to cancel off the square, and you're left with x plus 7. On the right, square root of negative 25. What are your thoughts?
25. Oh, wait, no. No, that's not what I meant to say.
Okay.
5.
Square root of 5 and square root of negative 1. Or something like that.
5i. I keep saying the wrong thing and I don't want to say that.
Okay.
5 plus minus.
Okay. That's the other thing I was waiting to hear. Did we all remember the plus minus and just weren't saying it? Or did we forget the plus minus? So, okay. I'm hearing good things. There's a plus minus. When you do the square root of negative 25, okay, one way I can think like how Eliazine said it, negative 1 times 25, yes? And some of you are probably at the point you just look at it and you're like, I got that. But if you need the pieces, there's the pieces, right? So let me rewrite this. This is x plus 7 equals plus or minus, what's the square root of negative 1? I. What's the square root of 25? 5. Put those together and we have 5i. So I am at the point of x plus 7 equals plus or minus 5i. My job is to solve for x. What's next?
Subtract 7 to the side.
Yes? If it's x plus 7, I'm going to subtract 7. Now, Okay. The left side. We're down to just x, yes? Now, the right side. Can I put the 7 and the 5i together? No, or excuse me, negative 7 and 5i. I can't put them together because they're not like terms, are they? So here's the deal. You could write plus or minus 5i minus 7. A math person's going to see that's a little more awkward.
Negative
What?
7 plus or minus 5.
This is the more, I don't know, mathematical way. This is the more normal notation. How's that? Okay, it's not that plus or minus 5i minus 7 is wrong. It's just awkward. Here, by putting that single number first, the negative 7, and then the plus or minus 5i, makes it a little bit easier. And we're done there, folks, because those aren't like terms, are they? We learned how to add and subtract i's day before yesterday. They're not like terms. So we're done there. Okay? Now, let me ask you a question. Example A, how many answers did we have?
1.
2.
2.
Oh yeah, it is 2.
And why is it 2? Because there's a
Positive.
positive 3 and a negative 3, yes? Okay. How many answers are on B?
2.
3. 2.
Dose.
3.
About 2.
So negative 7 doesn't count.
So, well, one answer is what is negative 7 plus 5i? And the other answer is
Oh.
negative 7 minus 5i. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Now, okay, let's move down to C and D. C and D are a little bit different. Okay. These are different because on the left I have that quadratic equation here, that x squared plus a bx plus a c, but then it equals a number. Now, a couple lessons ago, you guys would have probably told me subtract the 81 over, yes? Make it equal to 0 and try and factor. Okay, technically, you could do that as long as there's, you could do that in this case. This one you couldn't. But my directions ask us to solve using square roots. Okay, that's my goal here. So I'm trying to use square roots. So, now, you guys don't recognize this yet, but I'm going to try and get you to recognize. On this left side, this is actually a perfect square on the left side. And when I say it's a perfect square on the left side, it's because I can factor it into two identical parentheses. And when I factor into two identical parentheses, it can look like B up here.
Oh, it's going to be like the x plus 6 squared.
So our goal here, what I want you to do is get C to look like how question B started. Okay, so that 81 is just hanging out on the right. Don't mess with him right now. I want you, and we're going to leave the 81. I'm going to write it as two parentheses for the moment, just because I need everyone to see it. If we're trying to factor this into two parentheses on the left, x squared breaks into two x's, x times x. I need numbers that what?
Multiply 36 and add to 12.
Okay, they're going to multiply to 36, and then they're going to add to 12. What multiplies to 36 and adds to 12? 6 and 6, yes? And if they multiply to be positive and add to be positive, they are both positives. Well, x plus 6 times x plus 6, how can I write that? X plus 6, quantity squared, equals 81. So by taking a moment to factor that perfect square on the left, does this equation look just like B now?
Yep.
Okay, so if it's x plus 6 quantity squared, what is an option? What can I do here? I can square root both sides. What's the square root of x plus 6 squared?
X plus 6.
X plus 6. The square root and the square cancel each other out. What do I need on the right when it says square root of 81? Plus or minus. What is the square root of 81? 9. And it's just a plain old 9, isn't it? There's no i's on this one. So that's one thing. It's a challenge you have to work through. Some problems are going to have i's, some problems aren't. Okay? So just be aware. How do I finish solving this?
Subtract 6.
Okay? It's x plus 6. We're going to subtract 6. And we're going to have x equals, okay? No?
It wouldn't be that?
Okay. So -6 plus or minus 9. It's just 9 because we already took the square root. The square root of 81 is 9. We don't just infinitely keep taking the square root. We took it once, we're done. Now, I'm not going to give you full credit here. Go a teeny bit farther.
Plus or minus 3.
No?
Add the 6.
Would you take 3 out of 11?
What is -6 plus 9? What is -6 minus 9?
3.
No. What?
3.
Negative 15.
Here's the point. Can we actually do this math here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no i's here, is it? We can actually do the math. Up here, we couldn't do the math, could we? So the idea here is I can do -6 plus 9 and -6 minus 9. Okay? So -6 plus 9 is 3. -6 minus 9 is -15. So my solutions actually become 3 and -15. Okay? So you be the judge. B, nope, I can't do it because there's an I. So I leave it with the plus or minus sign. C, it's just two numbers being added and subtracted. Do the math, and you get two separate answers.
And that's the full credit answer.
Yes. Yep. Okay. And I say, in all honesty, -6 plus or minus 9, I'm not even going to give you full credit. It's not just a Savas thing. I want you to realize, oh, hey, I can do that math. Or even my calculator can do that math. Okay. D. X squared minus 16x plus 64 equals 7. What am I going to ask you to try and do?
X plus 8.
Okay. We're going to try and factor this left because since it tells me to use square roots, I know it probably does. So I'm going to parentheses, and then it still equals 7. X squared breaks into x times x. What do I need this time?
Minus.
Multiplying to be 8, adding to be -16. Well, what multiplies to be, did I say multiply to be 8?
Yeah.
Well, you know where my brain's at. My brain's farther along in this problem. Multiply to be 64 and add to be -16.
It would be x minus 8.
Yeah. 8 times 8 is 64. 8 plus 8 is 16. Since they multiply to be a positive, we need the same signs. Since they add to be a negative, they are both negatives. Okay, and if you haven't already, let's rewrite that as x minus 8 quantity squared. And if you can see that and go straight to it, that's fine. I just know at this stage in the game, some of you can see it, some of you don't. So I'm trying to play my game safe up here. Okay, what's my step?
Square root.
Take the square root. Square root of 8x minus 8 squared? X minus 8. Square root of 7.
It'd be like plus or minus 7. Negative.
This guy's a good-
I don't know how to explain it, but I know what I'm doing.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah,
Okay.
you speak me.
Okay. Square root of 7 is, can we do the square root of 7? It's a decimal, but do I want decimals?
No.
Nope. So we're going to leave this as
7.
plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's not even like there's a perfect square I can pull out of there, is it? Okay? So you're done with that square root there. How do I finish this problem?
Add the
7.
Add the 8. So if it's x minus 8,
No, I didn't say 7.
we're going to add the 8 over. How am I going to express my answer?
Like the final answer, or like
Okay. I'm going to put 8 plus or minus the square root of 7 because I like my plus or minus sign in the middle. Okay. As I said, plus or minus the square root of 7 plus 8, it's not necessarily wrong. It's just mathematically awkward. Okay. And we're stopping here because I can't do the square root of 7. And because it's staying the square root of 7, I can't add and subtract 8 from it. Okay, so sometimes you get to add or subtract, sometimes you stop. Okay. So this is solving using square roots. C, you could have also just set equal to 0 and factored. However, D, we wouldn't have been able to set equal to 0 and factor. We would have had to have a different option there. Okay. This leads us into the bottom half, which is completing the square. Okay, so this is kind of like our intro. This is our beginning steps of, okay, you need to know this process to complete the square. Now, the idea with completing the square problems is they're not already in that form where we can take, where we can factor into this equal parentheses. So we have to have another option. And so steps 1 and 2 are going to be the key here, okay? So this is another kind of tool to put in our toolbox of how do we solve quadratic equations. When you can't factor, we need another plan, and this is one of those plans. Next week, we'll learn the plan of quadratic formula. When you can't factor, you could do quadratic formula if you wanted, okay? Completing the square is an option. Not one we always use, but it's an option. So you have 5 steps here. And if you look back at that blue formula sheet you used on the quiz, you're going to see these same 5 steps on that blue formula sheet. So it's not about memorizing the steps. I'm going to be nice and provide the steps, okay? You just have to know how to apply them, how to use them. Fair enough? Okay, it's going to take practice. Okay, so we have our steps up here. Rewrite the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. We're going to have to do b over 2 squared. We're going to factor. We're going to square root both sides. We're going to solve for x. This right here is what we just did up above. Steps 3, 4, and 5 are what we did on C and D up above. We factored the left side. We square rooted. We solved for x. Steps 1 and 2 are the new. Make sense? So, step 1, rewrite in the form x squared plus bx equals c.
For all Sergeant, I think
TV's
your
rough.
screen
Your
up
TV
there
just
is,
sounds crashed out.
it would be a pretty bad storm. That must be a
I doubt it even has anything to do with the storm, but.
oh.
It probably just joined the
Okay,
that way.
so 3x squared minus 12x plus 6 equals 0. Step 1, folks, look at it. Rewrite the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. What kind of steps do I need to take, here in example A, to make that happen?
Subtract 6 from 0.
Okay, subtract the 6 over is one of them. I could go with that. That's our other one. Okay, so I heard subtract 6. So at this point, I'm going to have 3x squared minus 12x equals negative 6. Yes?
Yep.
Okay. I heard talk of the other step because right now, am I x squared plus bx equals c? No, right now I'm ax squared plus bx equals c. Are we allowed to have an a value here?
Nope.
No, your only value you're allowed to have there, 1. No, nothing else. Okay? So, I heard the divide by 3. I like it. Let's do it. Now, yeah, it's a GCF, but I'm not going to factor it out because I don't want that extra number in here. This is an equation. When it's an equation, you can just divide that out and it can be gone. You can't do that if you're just factoring an expression, but anytime there's an equation with an equal sign, we can do that. So, on the, what does this become after I divide everything by 3? Okay, x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a blank because I'm prepping for what I know is next. Equals -2. Okay. Are you guys with me? That was step 1, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
I want to check off, I guess I can erase mine. I'm going to check off step 1 because I can erase mine. Okay, step 2. Oh, and by the way, on step 1, could you have divided by 3 and then subtracted the number over? Could you have switched that order?
Yeah.
Yes, you could have. It works the same. Okay, step 2. Complete the square by adding b over 2 squared to each side of the equation. So, look at our current equation here. What is b?
4x. -4x.
So let's drop off the x because b is just the number in front of it. So b is -4. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. We have to find b over 2 quantity squared. That's what we have to do. So b over 2, that means, what am I using for b? -4 over 2 quantity squared. -4 divided by 2 is
-2.
-2. -2 quantity squared is 4. Okay? We're going to take that number. And what are we supposed to do with it? Add it to each side of the equation. So, remember I said I left a gap earlier, right?
Yes.
This is why. I knew this was coming. Okay? If not, just rewrite your equation again in the next line. Okay? So we're going to add 4 on the left, and I'm going to add 4 on the right.
What is that?
Okay?
You touched me.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so that is step 2 officially. Step 2 was we completed the square by doing that b over 2 squared. We're adding it to both sides. Now, step 3. This is what we did up on problem C and D up above. It says factor the left side. When we factor that left side, it's always going to turn into parentheses squared. That's always what it's going to turn into every time. Now, I'm guessing at this stage in the game, it might be better if I write it as 2 parentheses. That was not a parenthesis. It was. It's called the BenQ glitching out is what it was. But, okay, x squared minus 4x plus 4. Factor this with me. The factoring should be easy. X squared breaks into x and x. What multiplies to be 4 and adds to be -4?
-2.
We're looking for 2 and 2. And they're both negative, yes?
Yep.
Okay. Otherwise written as x minus 2 quantity squared. Okay. On the right, we gotta go back and catch up the right. Just what's the right clean up to be?
2.
-2 plus 4 is 2. Okay? We good there? Okay, we just did step 3.
Take the square root of both sides.
Okay? Take the square root of step 4, square root both sides. That's what we were doing up above, right?
Yep.
So we're going to square root. We're going to square root. On the left, what is the square root of x minus 2 squared?
X minus 2.
X minus 2. On the right, what am I going to write on the right for the square root of 2?
Plus or minus works.
Okay, are we still putting the plus or minuses in?
Yes.
Yes. So plus or minus. Do we know the square root of 2?
No.
No. There's no negative, so no I to take out. There's no perfect square, so it's just right to square root of 2. Okay, that's step 4. I don't even know if I really need to put step 5 because you know you're not done because we haven't finished solving for x, right? How do we solve for x?
Add 2.
Add 2. When we add 2, 2's on the left cancel. X equals
2 plus or minus 3.
good. Okay. You've completed the square. Okay. I'll be honest, it's not a favorite option. Okay? But there are certain situations that we need this. Okay? So we've got to learn the process. Questions I can answer there? Okay. Let's practice another one. Let's do B. And then we'll have a couple to practice on Monday to get us back in the groove. So,
What are you looking at?
B. X squared minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. So, start over on your steps, right?
Yep.
Step 1. Rewrite the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. Okay? My c value needs to move, doesn't it? So we are going to subtract 3. Good. And so now I have x squared minus 2x equals what?
-3.
Negative 3. I left a gap. I'm preparing. And again, just rewrite the line if you need to, you know. Okay. Have I completed step 1?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Am I in the form x squared plus bx equals c?
Yeah.
Yeah. This time, it's already a 1x squared, isn't it? So am I good?
Yeah.
We're good this time. Okay, so step 1, done.
Now you have to do 2 divided by 2 squared.
Okay, so now, what is my b value?
2.
Okay, officially, b is negative 2. And we're going to do b over 2 quantity squared. So negative 2 over 2 quantity squared, right? Negative 2 divided by 2 is?
1.
Officially, negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. What about negative 1 squared?
1.
It's positive 1, isn't it?
Yes.
What am I going to do with that positive 1?
Add it to both sides.
We're going to add it to both sides. So we're going to put a plus 1 here and here. So I'm adding it on the left and the right. Okay. That's step 2.
Did you just already do -3 plus 1?
Yeah, you can do that whenever. I wait until I, get to it, but yep. Okay. Step 3 is to factor. Again, I keep writing it. We're beginners. If you want to go ahead and go straight to your parentheses squared that it's supposed to come up, awesome. X squared breaks into x and x. We made this a perfect square, guys, so it should be the same number. What multiplies to be 1? What multiplies to be 1? What's my only option? 1 and 1. Adds to be negative 2. Can we make that work?
It's -1.
Negative 1, negative 1. Or more properly written as x minus 1 squared. If you didn't already clean up the right, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Okay, now what? Yes, square root. We square root the left, we square root the right. What is the square root of x minus 1 squared? X minus 1. What is the square root of -2?
Plus or
Square
minus.
negative. Oh,
Plus
plus
or
or minus
minus
square
2. Square root 2. Is it? Plus or minus square root 2, no?
No, you have to do that.
Oh, as you get back to 2, then the
It's gonna
times
be like
negative.
1 and 2. -1 times.
That's that weird stuff.
Okay, so I heard the plus or minus. I hope you're all saying the plus or minus because we've got to remember that. That's the reason we miss these the most. Now, it was the square root of -2. So realize the square root of -1 goes outside as an I. What's the square root of 2? It's going to stay square root of 2. So I'm going to write this as plus or minus I square root of 2. And
Add the 1 over.
add the 1 over. Solve for x. So if it's x minus 1, I'm going to add 1. And x is what?
Plus or minus I square root 2. Or is it 2 or square root 2I?
I like what you first said. 1 plus or minus sign in the middle, and then I square roots of 2. Okay? I want you to flip over. We have 6 minutes left, yes?
Yep.
Am I right on that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Ja, 6 minuten.
I want you to flip over to the back.
No.
Okay? On the back, at the top, completing the square. What did I just do at the top? I just reprinted the same steps, yes?
Yes.
So you're not flipping back and forth. Or for my benefit, maybe. I don't know. Someone's benefit. Okay? Then, there's 2 more examples, C and D.
Yes.
Try C.
Right now?
I know.
It's fresh in your head. You're learning the process, yes?
Yeah.
Try C. On Monday, we will start by going over C as a class. Okay? And you'll be able to see if you got it right. Which, if you get C done today and you want to check with me or a neighbor to see if you agree with answers, I'm all for it. Okay? 2-5 Sabbath will be available if you want to start working on it over the weekend, but it won't be due until Tuesday. Okay?